I would like to discuss the following shayla, that what would be the halacha if, Rahman al-Islam, there was an article would be printed in, let's say, the New York Times or some other fancy schmancy real estate magazine about an individual, a community, and so on. Would you be permitted to read such an article? Is it permitted? Or is that Loshon Hara? Is that something that's mutter or aser? Another shayla would be Benegea writing a negative review about a merchant. Is that permitted? Is that something that is allowed? We know that there's an isser of Loshon Hara. I can't go over to someone and tell them, something that's negative about someone else. We know that's pasha. That's an isser of Loshon Hara. No explanation needed. Now, what would be if I were to say it over to two people? L'chayra, simple svar would be even more aser. 3 people. That should be even more aser. Pasha mitzad a svara. Even just mitzad secha yasha, you'd think that the more people I say it over to, the bigger the aver it is. However, the Gemara in Bab Basra and Daf Lametes says, Kol misamra ba'apei tasa lesba mishum lishna bisha. That if you were to say over Loshon Hara in front of 3 people, you don't have an issur of Loshon Hara. So just a simple reading of the Gemara is a pella, because one could understand on a very simple level, if I say over Loshon Hara to one person, it's obvious why that's aser. So kol shekin if I say it over to 3 people. So now all of a sudden we have a Gemara that says if you say it over in front of 3 people, it's mutter. So you gather the larger the audience, you found a heter for Loshon Hara. Say it over in front of a stadium. It's mutter. What's the pshat in the Gemara? Pasha pshat. So the Rashbam on the Gemara says that avada, the speaker, has an isser of Loshon Hara. The one who's saying over the Loshon Hara in front of the 3 people, he's for sure over the isser of Loshon Hara. However, those 3 people who are present, since there's a concept of chaver chaver, that once Loshon Hara is said over in front of 3 people, it's going to go around, it's going to become public knowledge. So now, says the Rashbam, they can go and repeat it. And not only could they repeat it, but they could even repeat it to the subject of the Loshon Hara. In other words, they could go and do technically what we would say is asat rechilos, because now it's already public knowledge, and therefore it's mutter. So that's what the Rashbam says. That's the first mahalach on how to learn the Gemara. However, there's another 4 mahalchim. There's Taisus, and Taisus on the Gemara says something else. Taisus says that we're talking about the speaker. The heter of apei tlasa is given to the one who's saying the Loshon Hara. In other words, if a person says Loshon Hara in front of 3 people, he has no isser whatsoever. And the simple reading of Taisus is a pella. And therefore the Chavetz Chaim says it's impossible on a pashat pshat. It's impossible for that to be pshat in Taisus. But if you read Taisus, Taisus says, Lesba mishum l'shabisha pirush la'isay she'aymer l'fnei gimel. We're talking about the person who's saying over the Loshon Hara, he has a heter. So what's the pshat in such a zach? How could that be? So says the Chavetz Chaim, the pshat in Taisus is not pashat pshat, it's alpi Taisus in Erechin. He says in mitzad svara. Taisus in Erechin, the Gemara has a very similar Gemara. It says, again, kol mislat misamra ba'apei tlasa lesba mishum l'shabisha. Taisus says over there, it does not mean that the speaker doesn't have an isser of saying gnus on someone else, of stam ranting about someone else. Rather, what it means to say that the speaker is allowed to say something which could be interpreted in one of 2 ways. Says Taisus, kigayin denura beplania. In other words, let's say a person is coming to a city, he wants to know where there is, where you can get food or whatever it is, and it's midnight, and they say you can go to Yankel's house. Now, when you say you can go to Yankel's house, that can be interpreted in 1 of 2 ways. That either could be because he's tremendous machasarach, and he always has a fire going, and he's always ready to serve whoever needs and put up a chalent for whoever needs a chalent at midnight, or it can mean that Yankel's a pashut, he's just a party animal. So it's a vak Loshon Hara. Such Loshon Hara, says the Chavetz Chaim, is permitted to say over in front of 3 people. Usually we have an isser even for avak Loshon Hara. You can't say over something that could be interpreted as a positive or as a negative. However, if it's said over in front of 3 people, says the Chavetz Chaim, we can assume very, very, very safely that it has to be that the speaker means it as a positive. Why? Because we have the concept, again, the klal, chaver chaver islay. So if chaver chaver islay, so he knows, if I say it in front of 3 people, I know it's definitely going to get back to the subject of Loshon Hara. So LMI, we can advise from that I meant it as a positive, I didn't mean it as a negative. That's the way the Chavetz Chaim learns Taisus. So therefore, you have Taisus' pshat, you have the Rashbam's pshat. Tosfos is saying it's going back on the speaker, and that's where the heter is. And the Rashbam, like we said before, said it's going back into the ones who are listening. I would just want to say over, Rashi learns the Gemara and Erechin totally different. And I don't want to get involved in the other shittas or Rishonim, but there's Rashi, there's Rabbeinu Yaina. I want to focus on three shittas: the Rashbam, the Rambam, and Tosfos. So the Rambam in Hilchos Deis in Parak Hey Zayin Halacha Zayin. It's Parak Zayin Halacha Hey. He says very similar to the Rashbam that the heter of Apith Tosa is given to the ones who are listening. However, he does not extend the heter to Rechilos. Meaning, we said, according to the Rashbam, that the heter of Apith Tosa is even for Rechilos. So someone goes and says over Loshon Hara in front of three people, those three people are permitted to go and repeat what they heard, even to the subject of Loshon Hara. In other words, for Rechilos. However, the Rambam leaves that out. So the Rambam says that the heter of Apith Tosa is given to the three people that are sitting there. Three people are sitting there, they're allowed to go and repeat it because the concept of Chav is like. Now the simple kasha on this right away is that it's a pella. What could be pshat in the Rambam? All of a sudden, someone goes and tells you over Loshon Hara, and it's for sure going to go out. It's going to be public knowledge. Okay, but where did I have the heter to go and repeat it? Who said I'm the one who's allowed to go and be mefarsim this Loshon Hara? So,
circular. What
did you say?
You're allowing them to do it because they're going to do it anyway.
Correct. So that's the Chavetz Chaim has as an issue. What's the pshat in the Rambam? Right? How could you're telling me the pshat is that the heter of Apith Tosa is given to the three people? Why? Because one, you say something in front of three people, then there's a call that goes out. It's for sure going to be public knowledge. And there's it's Shur and the Rashbam also. Yeah, 100%. The Rashbam and the Rambam are saying very similar. The only thing that the Rashbam and the Rambam are seem to be different about is that the Rashbam extends it to Rechilos. The Rambam never said that. If you look in the Be'er Chaim, he puts the Rashbam and the Rambam together. However, if you look in the Rambam in Hilchos Deis, he doesn't say anything about Rechilos. And the Chavetz Chaim bavarns that, but Ba'etzim they're saying the same exact svara. They're not arguing in with regard to the heter of Apith Tosa. It's given to the people who are listening. So the shaila is the Chavetz Chaim poses, like you were asking, what's the pshat in the heter of Apith Tosa even on the Rambam and the Rashbam? Because you're telling me that because it's public knowledge, so now I have a heter to go do an isser. So fakir, so don't let me do it. So says the Chavetz Chaim a chiddush, because you're not called a roichel, you're not called a peddler. Something that's public knowledge is public, and when I go and I say it over again, that's not called a roichel. The whole entire isser of saying over Loshon Hara is continuing and furthering this gnus about this individual. However, if it's already out there, so I'm not doing anything. So says the Chavetz Chaim, a chiddush, that's not called a roichel. So therefore, that's the heter of the Rambam and the Rashbam. Now, so then it comes out, you have a kula according to the Chavetz Chaim. You have a kula, not according to the Chavetz Chaim, a kula according to the Rambam. You have a kula that is that you're able to go and say over Loshon Hara, which was said over Ba'apith Tosa. So at this point, if we were to end the shir, so if a person would want to go and read such an article, it should come out that it's mutter, 100% mutter, because it's public knowledge. Something that's written in a magazine or it's written in a newspaper, it's already public knowledge out there. And by me reading it and saying it over, what am I doing? However, it's not so simple. First of all, the Chavetz Chaim brings down the Shittas Rambam as a Yesh Omrim. If you look in the halachas, he doesn't bring it down as a psak, he brings it down as a Yesh Omrim. And he himself in the Be'er Chaim says there's no Gemara that says what the Rambam is saying, and he's only bringing it down because there are many Paiskim that paskin like that, including the Aruch HaShulchan. However, he says that it's not a pashat psak, and not only is it not a pashat psak, but there are 5 tnoim to this heter. So again, just for the sake of clarity, the Rambam is saying that the heter of Apith Tosa is a heter which is given to the listeners, the ones who are listening to the Loshon Hara. But that which they're allowed to go and repeat it to other people, there are 5 conditions. One is it has to be b'derech hakroi. It has to come up in conversation. You can't be mechavan l'gnos. In other words, I can't go lahedya. Oh, I heard Loshon Hara about Ruvain, and now I want to go and rip this guy to shreds because it's out there anyways. It's 100%. That's usher. If it comes up in conversation, then you're allowed to repeat what you heard. That's number 1. Number 2 is it has to be ba'isa ir. It has to be in the same exact city. You can't go and repeat something that people are not going to find out about. So nowadays it's a little bit more complicated because now that we have texting, we have email and social media and everything. When someone says over Loshon Hara, it spreads out wherever you turn. So says Binyamin Cohen in his Sefer, and Chalkas Binyamin, that it depends who you're talking to, and if you're speaking to a Chabura that does not have texting, so pshat is, then you can assume from those three people it's not going to go out. So it's limited. It's kafi ish Chabura. If you're speaking to people who are on social media, in a Hanami, it's going to go out. It's going to be public knowledge. So it's hakol kafi the Chabura that you're speaking to. That's condition number 2. Condition number 3 is you can't embellish anything that you've heard. In other words, you can only repeat exactly what you heard. So if the Loshon Hara was said, you can only repeat it. And that's not so geshmak. Because it's much more geshmak to give a wink, to give a smile, to add in a shtickle knetch to the maisa. It's not so geshmak to just say over the Loshon Hara exactly the way it was. So that being said, again, you're limiting the heter of aplitasa. Again, another heter is that it has to be said over to somebody who won't believe it as a fact. If you're going to say it over to somebody who's going to believe this that you're saying as a fact, you lost the whole entire heter. And then the last heter is it's only given to the first 3 people that were by this seeper of Loshon Hara. So going back to our Shiloh, whether a person could go and read such a magazine or such an article. I spoke to a lot of people about this, and some people, one person I spoke to, I didn't get the ability to handle with him. He told me, I can't tell you it's usher, however, I'm going to tell you that you shouldn't do it. Don't do it, but I can't tell you it's usher.
Reading or saying it over?
Reading it. We're saying it over, so we're limited to these five tonight. Now, I would like to propose that it's usher. Now, based on a few different svaras, spoke to someone, Rabbi Yosef Pinter tonight, is an Eden by Shmuel Felder. He wrote a sefer on Hilchos Chafetz Chaim. He didn't give me a skama on the svaras. He said he has to get back to me. But I was telling him that I want to say it's aser, and I explained to him the svaras that I want to say. First of all, there's an isser to be mitzaref yourself to a chabura of Loshon Hara. So number 1, if you go and you know that someone is saying lahadi Loshon Hara, albeit that there's a heter of aplitasa, and it's public knowledge, am I allowed to go and sit down and join them? And sit with them? No, there's an isser. So I would like to propose that there's the same isser to go and read a magazine or such an article. I'm being mitzvah for myself. So even if I'm not going to go and repeat it or anything, but still, for what purpose do I gain from this? There's no tayalas. So I'm being mitzvah for myself to a chabura of Loshon Hara. That's one svara I would like to say. Perhaps to say that it's aser. Another svara is that when something's written, it has a much stronger effect on a person than when it's said over. And this is not just my svara. The Maram and Chuvis says this in Chiluk Zayin Tshuva Tzadi Beis. Dirshu. They would sign this Maramakim, and they say, I'm holding a Chuvas Marsham. They say that he says that there's a svara to say that something that's written has a much stronger effect on someone when someone reads it. So although someone's going to go in with a ganze kavana that they're not going to believe what's written, l'maisa, you're walking into a very dangerous area, and it's almost impossible that you're not going to believe something that's written there. That's fine. But Lu Yitzur, you're such a person that's very, that has 100% confidence. You're not going to you're not going to believe what you're reading. So I would still like to propose another isser, and that is as follows: the heter of aplitasa is given as long as you're not going to embellish, as long as you're not going to be moisef on anything. Now, any article that's written in a public magazine is written with embellishments. Because if it wasn't, it wouldn't sell. No one's interested in reading the facts. No one's interested in reading that someone stole money. They want to hear juicy details about it. And even if they're not true, they want to hear, it has to be a story. It has to be geshmak. Loshon Hara has to be geshmak. Otherwise, it's not kedai de'eser, right? So pshat is the same thing. It's not a magazine that sells if it's not geshmak. So there's bevadai, there's embellishments. There's for sure things that are not there that are true. Now the heter of apitlosa was given to Loshon Hara. That's for sure true. Who said it's given for Moisi Shemra? Where do you see in the Sefer Chafetz Chaim that the heter of apitlosa was given for Moisi Shemra? So that was the other svara that I would like to propose that it's aser. Now there is another thing, the Sheltu, another Maramakim, that the Chafetz Chaim in his letters he writes that a person who reads such magazines and such things is a messiah, and therefore asabli tenes adin. Now the shaila is, if nowadays you're a messiah, the New York Times is going to print an article regardless whether the Jewish community reads it or not. So I don't know that you have. I don't know if the Chafetz Chaim, when he says that that asad litin adin is only because you're a Messiah, or because Lamaisa you're reading such articles. I'm not sure. I don't know. Al Kapanim, Benegay this year, I would like to propose that perhaps it is usher to read such articles. And based on everything we've said till now, I don't know what the tzad would be to be matter writing a negative review. Now this, I would just like to switch gears a little bit for the last few minutes. On Rosh Hashanah, I was eating by the Rosh Kel's house. Rabbi Yamin Herman told me over a Vart, and Rosh Kel had a teretz, and he showed me from the Sefer of Malas HaTorah, from the brother of Vilna Gaon, a teretz to his kasha. I read a little bit before and a little bit after, and actually it was underlined in Rabbi Bludger's Sefer. It said over there that the Iker Shviras HaYetzer is Misha Shemer's Piv. The way for a person to break his Yetzer Hara is by watching what comes out of his mouth. So Shana was very necessary. What does that mean? A person, the Iker Shvira of the Yetzer Hara is by watching what comes out of a person's mouth. We're all trying to figure out how to break our Yetzer Hara. It says the Malas HaTorah in one line. The Iker Shvira Yetzer is to watch what comes out of your mouth. To me, it seemed to be a very hard thing to understand. So Loshon Hara, and Devel Peh, all the Rechilos, Baiti Shemra, so on. But that's the way to break your Yetzer Hara. What's the pshan such as that? So I had the opportunity, Sukkot Ben Zmanim. I was with my uncle Rabbi Chaim, and I asked him this kasha. I asked him, what's the pshat? What's the pshat in the Sefer Malas HaTorah? How could it be that the way to break a person's Yetzer Hara and to uproot his Yetzer Hara is by watching what comes out of his mouth? So he told me to Unclus in Parshat Bereshis that says that describes a person as a medaber. The chiluk between a human being and all other creations of the Rebbeinu Shalom is that a human being has a koyach hadibur, and that is what defines us. It's not just another thing, another mile that we had, but rather it defines us. And when a person chepers with the koyach hadibur, he's cheppering with the Shem Adam, with what it means to be a human being. And that was his var. The pshat in the Malas HaTorah is that when a person goes and cheppers with his dibur, his koyach hadibur, he's cheppering with it means the Shem Adam. And therefore, when you're showing what comes out of you, that's breaking the Yetzer Hara, because a person is supposed to live without that. And he's touching up the mensch. So I wanted to expound on this inyan a little bit. The Medrash says in Parshas Bereshis that the Nachash was trying to convince Chava to eat from the Eitz Hadas. And how did she convince her? She told him, and the Mefarshim on the Medrash say that the Nachash was an apikuros. She told her as follows: that the reason why the Rebbeinu Shalom told you not to eat from the Eitz Hadas is because if you eat from the Eitz Hadas, you're going to have the koyach to create other ilamas. And just like a craftsman doesn't want a competitor, HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't want a competition. And that's the reason why he's telling you not to eat from the Eitz Hadas. So in other words, the Nachash was over on Loshon Hara. The first chet that we know of the Torah was the chet of Loshon Hara. And what came out of that? The Gemara in Shabbos, and Kuf Mem Vav says, Arayis came out of that. Arayis came out of Isra of Loshon Hara. What else came out of the Isra of Loshon Hara? We know Ritzicha, because now there was a concept of death. It was only introduced after they ate from the Eitz Hadas. L'chayra, what else came out of it? Avodah Zarah, because now they were kicked out of Gan Eden. They were out of Gan Eden. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wasn't revealed the same way he was. So when you read the Gemara in Erechin, and the Gemara in Erechin says that Loshon Hara is Keneged the Gimel Averes Chamuris, it's a Pella. What do you mean it's Keneged the Gimel Averes Chamuris? Yes, there have been Yonos, a lot of Mefarshim say it's not literal, but based on this, you have a little bit of a deeper understanding. The koyach of the first chet of Brias HaOlam was the chet of Loshon Hara, and what came out of that was the Gimel Chamuris. So just as a inyan of Chizuk to bring out the Chamirus of Loshon Hara, we see that is what destroyed the world from the onset of creation of Brias HaOlam. That's what destroyed the world, was the chet of Loshon Hara. Shkaya.